Harvey had written in a memo at one point when he was running the Executive Action Program that he wanted to use Corsicans.
Wanted to use what?
Corsicans.
Yeah.
As hitmen. Do you think it's possible that when he was in Rome that he might have recruited a Corsican assassin to kill Kennedy?
Yes. It is possible. I mean, it's one thing to set yourself up in splendid isolation, and it's another thing to use that isolation as a tool,
right,
so that you're not an immediate suspect in the case of a capital crime.
Right, right, because he was in Rome.
Is that understandable?
Yeah,
Okay.
very. My understanding is that Harvey had a very severe clash with Bobby Kennedy around the time of the missile crisis, and that Kennedy basically
I think it was
said,
earlier than that. And he posted an old slogan somewhere in the agency premises that said, the tree of liberty must be nourished by the blood of patriots. And this incensed Bobby Kennedy. And they clashed on that particular point.
Let me ask you.
Sure.
John F. Kennedy's assassination.
Yep.
Who did that?
It was done by William Harvey, who was the head of the CIA's assassination unit at that time. David Morales was directly involved in it. He likewise is the gentleman who killed Che Guevara down in Bolivia in '67, where they put him up against a firing wall and killed him and shot and killed him. Morales was part of that. I believe that because I saw, heard, and read a confession from E. Howard Hunt on a deathbed to his son. And when he confessed, it was not a confession of remorse. It was a confession of pride. He wanted the world to know that we helped you out. We killed John Kennedy, this communist sympathizer.
Everything was extremely tense. And suddenly it was discovered that Harvey had sent a team of people into Cuba. And the Kennedys were very concerned that this crisis might explode into nuclear war. And Robert Kennedy particularly was in a rage when he heard that this loose cannon had added a further element of unpredictability to the situation.
Harvey hated the Kennedys. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, he had a confrontation with Bobby Kennedy that virtually ended his career, exiling him to an intelligence station in Rome.
We had a terrible experience with the ones that were handling it at the time of the missile crisis. They were going to send 60 people into Cuba right during the missile crisis. Nobody knew what they were doing. And we pinned it down to the fellow who was supposed to be in charge, and he said we planned it because the military wanted it done. And I asked the military, and they never heard of it.
Oh my God. I believe he was killed because he already had détente. It's come out now through a book called JFK and the Unspeakable. It was discovered in the Vatican. Kennedy and Khrushchev were back-channel communicating that their governments didn't even know it. And both of them had agreed they were going to end the Cold War by '65. Imagine what the world would be. And what happened? Kennedy was killed. They were doing it through Pope John. He died of cancer. And Khrushchev a coup d'etat happened in Russia. And Khrushchev was taken out of office because there were people that wanted the Cold War. And what did we get substantially? 20 more years of it. We had actually been in there since the '50s with advisors, and President Kennedy had even raised that number of advisors, but then he took a turn the other way before he was killed. Kennedy had ordered our first 1,000 out by December of '63, and he said we'd be completely out of Vietnam by the time he was reelected and serving in '65. So there would not have been a Vietnam War had John F. Kennedy lived. But unfortunately, John F. Kennedy was taken out. He was killed. Now, that's another matter on its own of who did that, but you notice that as soon as Kennedy was killed, the Vietnam policy reversed itself. Lyndon Johnson then sent more troops in, and of course, we'll discuss it later, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which is what put our combat troops on the ground.